It's indeed interesting to see the manufacture of various components and equipment for an oil and gas facility processing unit. Hi there and welcome to Oil and Gas, Power Plant and Industrial Facilities Engineering, Part 3. In Part 2 we discuss process flow with respect to the major considerations, whereby we concluded that one of the major drawings which is a deliverable in that stage is the process flow diagram, also known as PFD. We also discussed the principle of conservation of mass, which is important in the design of each processing unit, where you talk about the conditions of the fluid going into the unit and the conditions of the fluid coming out of the unit. There we also looked at the kind of fluid also determines what kind of equipment will be required to process them when you're talking about a gas and when you're talking about a liquid. We also came up with the equation of mass flow rates, which is another important equation in process flow design. Other key considerations in that stage are temperature, pressure, and probably the purity of the fluid. Here, once you have carried out the process design, you then know what kind of fluid is going to be processed in each unit. The equipment required to process this fluid is what we are discussing in Part 3 here. So in Part 3 we are going to be looking at equipment acquisition stages, classification of the equipment, design and specification of equipment. We are going to discuss briefly on what the engineering drawings entail. We are going to look at a checklist on process and mechanical data sheets. We are also going to look at material acquisition, then we will conclude on this talk as well as talk briefly about what is going to be discussed in Part 4 of this oil and gas series. So with respect to material acquisition, there are basically 5 stages. There may be other ways to classify it, but I've broadened them to 5 stages for easy understanding and mental imagery. First of all, we need to design the equipment and provide specifications. Secondly, we need a lot of documentation to describe the various methods for inspecting this equipment, fabrication, construction, and other considerations. We are also going to carry out a tender and bid for different manufacturers and vendors to provide their own services. We are also going to carry out tracking of this equipment during production stage. For example, we are going to inspect it, the kind of materials being used, the welding approaches, the different methods of construction to ensure that it meets the standards in the various codes of practice. Then finally, if the equipment fabrication passes the standards which are required, then it is finally approved and accepted, and then delivery is scheduled to the site. So with respect to classification of equipment, there may be various ways to classify equipment in the oil and gas industry. It may be by material type, it may be by the kind of whether it is a vertical vessel or horizontal vessel in terms of its geometry, which is usually important for structural engineers. But for a holistic kind of classification, since we are discussing with all other disciplines of engineering, civil, mechanical, electrical, and the likes, we are using this categorization for the various equipments. First of all, we have static equipment, we have vibrating equipment, we have fire equipment, and we have packages. With respect to the packages, we have 2 types. We have equipment packages and we have processing units packages. So you see briefly on the screen the various kinds of equipment. Some of these equipment are powered by a heating source, while others are not. Like a fractionating column is a fire-powered equipment, while there are some other equipment that are not. You also have vibrating equipment such as pumps and compressors and the likes. So if you look to the right of your screen, you are going to see 2 different kinds of equipment. They are actually called packages. The left picture is an equipment package because it's housing one equipment, say a compressor, and the various appurtenances of that compressor. While the picture on the right is like a gas processing unit, probably a gas metering unit that processes gases, does various purification, and then goes to the point where you're able to actually discharged from this processing unit as a finished product for consumers. So this is a complete processing unit for a packaged equipment, and the left is an equipment package for just one equipment and its appurtenances. These packages are usually supported on top of a template. This template is usually an I section or a beam section that supports all the components of these processing units. This template is called the skid. In most cases, this skid is attached to some other foundation support or a different structure, but it is the bottom surface of the package equipment. With respect to the design and detailing of the various equipment, partial design and drawings are provided by the engineering company that wants to procure the services of various manufacturers and vendors. But with respect to more detailed and rigorous design drawings and calculations, the responsibility falls to the engineering company when it comes to pressure vessels and above ground steel storage tanks, just to mention a few. With respect to these two equipments, the details up to the level of the thickness and the type of materials used for their construction is specified by the engineering company, and they also provide comprehensive drawings for the whole layout of this equipment. So you see here a schematic on the left for pressure vessels done by the engineering company as obtained from the video of Oil and Gas Engineering Guide by Herve Baron. The link of that video is in the description. The picture to the right is of a storage tank, above steel storage tank that was done on start foundation. So the one to the right is usually done by the structural engineer, and it provides full calculations and drawings for the various materials used in the construction of the above ground steel storage tank. So during the design process, in order to share information amongst the engineers as well as to get manufactured equipment from vendors, two data sheets are provided, one of which is the process data sheet and the other is the mechanical data sheet. Both of them contain different level of details. The process data sheet is more concise in that it provides purpose of equipment, the fluid properties, as well as general functionality requirements of that processing unit, while the mechanical data sheet is more specific to the kind of equipment that is supposed to carry out all this functionality. So in this case, the mechanical data sheet contains details such as design, construction details, inspection and testing of equipment details. It also provides details of which codes of practice is going to be utilized for both the design, construction, as well as the inspection and testing of the equipment, including the criteria for final approval of this equipment. So these codes of practice provide all these details. Then it also provides materials for construction. Then this data sheet also provides details as to the location of installation of the equipment. For example, if an equipment is going to be installed outdoor and an equipment is going to be installed indoor, there are different ways to prepare the surface in order for it to respond to the harsh weather conditions. Also, if you are going to be placing an equipment close to an administrative area where you have a lot of people working, it will be more dangerous to put an equipment that is not protected in the event of an explosion or a blast. So these are key considerations in the design and request for mechanical equipment. Also, the engineering company also recommends their own choice of equipment because they have been in the business for a while, so they know what kind of equipment they are most favorable with. So you see here a sample data sheet for both the processing data as well as the mechanical equipment data. So that checklist we provided in the previous slide is a summary of what we have on these two data sheets. So you can look through it and you can actually see the location, you can see the various codes as well as the different responses to the location and weather conditions of where an equipment is going to be located, which is available on the right of the mechanical data sheet. While on the left, you have the specification of the kinds of fluid that is going to be processed, as well as the different flow considerations for that processing unit. So, as described in the previous slide where we talk about process being the functionality and detail, while the mechanical has to do with design and construction information. So once the design and various specification has been done and various documentation from the engineering side has been generated, the engineering unit liaises with the procurement unit, considering that it's a large organization, and they together provide bid documents and tender documents that are important for conducting the acquisition of various equipment through a tender. So these are sample tables that are used for procurement of this kind of equipment. So you have list of materials, basically like you would do quantity surveying, but there are some few other details that are more specific to equipment acquisition. So you have something like item description, quantity, as well as the tag number. The tag number is more unique to the kind of equipment based on a catalog of different kinds of equipment that have been constructed in the past. Also, you have applicable documentation, which is what has the equipment specification as we have described before, as well as the international codes and standards. These equipment specification may be excerpts from these international codes and standards, or as well as some performance characteristics based on the design. But you also need to attach the international codes and standards because they provide more details with respect to inspection, testing, and final acceptance. So each of these documents have their various document number, which have to be detailed here. And these documents are revised often, so you need to have the version number of the document so that everybody is on the same page with respect to which document is being used as a standard. So with respect to material acquisition, the various engineering disciplines are involved in the evaluation, supervision, inspection, approval of the vendor's production in this case. So whatever the vendor is manufacturing, these various engineering units will need to inspect the work to ensure that it meets the standard as set forth in the various company standards and codes of practice. So in conclusion, we have looked at the various steps towards acquiring equipment for an oil and gas facility. Like we have said earlier, oil and gas facility, because of the scale as well as the complexity of the project, is similar to power plant and industrial facilities. So in most cases, you are going to be applying these same broad number of steps towards acquiring equipment for those other fields of engineering. So we are talking about design, compiling of documents, requesting for manufacturers or vendors. They are going to track the equipment manufacture through inspection. Then it's going to be finally accepted, and upon acceptance, delivery is going to be scheduled. And we also said that there are various engineering fields that are going to work together because various engineering units are connected in terms of the equipment. So in the next video, which is part 4, we are going to be looking at plant layout for oil and gas, power plant, and industrial facilities. So until next time, Aqua Delta Tech, where we create for better living.